Tonto. Miss Loomis, would you send in Mr. Tonto, please?
The year was 1957, and the biggest Native American star in Hollywood was asked about the role that made him a global icon, Tonto in The Lone Ranger. He had spent nearly a decade smiling, riding, and delivering simple, broken English lines. But when asked about his most famous character, the man born Harold J. Smith didn't smile. He offered just 3 words that ripped the mask off his career. Tonto is stupid. This shocking truth was only one piece of a story Hollywood desperately tried to hide. He was an Olympic-level athlete, a Mohawk chief's grandson, and a Golden Gloves boxer. Yet, he was forced to play an offensive stereotype, earning only half the salary of his white co-star. He was publicly a smiling sidekick, but privately a man so frustrated a director once had to be physically held back from attacking him on set. The name Tonto itself was a constant, bitter joke. It means fool in Spanish. This is the tragic, untold story of the brilliant man who suffered in silence while making television history. The scars of the Six Nations Reserve. Before he was J. Silverheels, he was Harold J. Smith, a boy on the Six Nations of the Grand River Reserve near Hagersville, Ontario. His father, Alexander George Edwin Smith, was a decorated hero who earned the Military Cross for bravery in World War I. But when he came home, the Canadian government left him crippled and deafened by artillery, surviving on a pitiful $49 a month. Harold saw firsthand that great sacrifice meant little to the system. This early lesson in unrecognized sacrifice was quickly followed by cultural trauma. He grew up as Canada's residential schools aggressively tried to erase Indigenous languages. At Six Nations, students were beaten for speaking Mohawk. His own sister was sent away to one of these institutions and came back unable to speak her language properly. When the Great Depression hit, the family moved to Buffalo. His mother, Mabel, was forced to barter away family heirlooms just to get food. They lived in relentless, crushing poverty that didn't just hurt the stomach. It made people feel like they didn't exist. This was the dignity J. Silverheels was fighting to reclaim long before he ever stepped onto a Hollywood set. His fight for respect, however, would first take place on the sports field. From lacrosse legend to Golden Gloves crisis, poverty couldn't stop Harold Smith's incredible talent. By the age of 19, he was playing professional box lacrosse for the Toronto Imps, earning $75 per game, a huge amount during the Depression. It was his athletic speed that gave him his famous name. After he sprinted past a defender so fast that his shoes seemed to flash silver, fans and newspapers called him Silverheels. The name stuck. His speed wasn't just magnetic, it was controversial. In one Montreal game, a rough foul sparked a vicious brawl, and Jay was suspended for throwing punches. But when he returned, ticket sales tripled. People wanted to see him. Next, he chased a new dream: boxing. He entered the Golden Gloves tournament at Madison Square Garden. He fought his way to the semifinals before taking a devastating punch that shattered his jaw in 2 places. The injury ended his boxing career immediately. He lost nearly 25 pounds on a liquid diet, but the prize money was just enough to keep his family afloat. That brutal fight taught him an essential Hollywood lesson: how to take pain and keep moving. Hollywood's humiliation and the road to stardom. In 1937, while touring Los Angeles with his lacrosse team, a comedian noticed J. Silverheels sprinting at Gilmore Stadium and offered him a film role. He performed a single diving catch stunt for $150, twice what lacrosse paid. The shift was immediate. But Hollywood was no sanctuary. He worked as a stunt man and hustled to survive, often having to bus tables at night. For casting calls, directors made him strip to the waist, judging his body more than his acting talent. He was paid less than $20 a day, even when he landed a recurring role in Drums Along the Mohawk. He remained uncredited in 15-plus films, solidifying his role as the Invisible Man in his own story. The racism wasn't confined to the backlots. While touring the American South with his lacrosse team, the constant humiliation was inescapable. Hotels and restaurants turned him away. In one shocking instance in Louisville, police threatened him just for using a bathroom marked "Whites Only." These weren't rare events. They were the daily reality. He carried this systemic disrespect with him, a burning motivation that would later fuel his fight for better representation. The double-edged sword of the Lone Ranger. Everything changed in 1949. Jay Silverheels beat out 35 other actors to land the role of Tonto in The Lone Ranger. It was a historical moment, the first Native American playing a Native American character on television. But this victory had a poisoned core. The name itself, Tonto, meant fool or stupid in Spanish, a fact Silverheels bitterly knew and resented. This resentment boiled over when, during a visit to his home reserve in 1957, he gave the famous raw declaration, "Tonto is stupid." The conflict wasn't limited to the name. It was in the lines. Jay had a reputation for not reading the script, not because he was lazy, but because the lines were always the same. Bad, stiff, broken English, written to sound authentic. So he ad-libbed, saying things like, "Me wait here. You go into town, that right?" Directors were absolutely furious. Alan Dinhart remembered a director named Wilhelm Thiele, who went red with rage and had to be physically restrained from attacking Silverheels on set in 1955. Only the Lone Ranger himself, Clayton Moore, defended him, saying, "Let it play. It sounds more natural." But the ultimate insult was the pay disparity. While the show rocketed to the top 10 in the Nielsen ratings, Jay Silverheels, the co-star, was paid approximately $100,000 per season, which is a huge sum today, worth over $850,000. But it was only half of what Clayton Moore was earning. The show gave him fame, but it solidified the stereotype and enshrined the financial inequality he'd fought his entire life. The heartbreak and the quiet activism. The stress of the job, combined with heavy smoking, took a tragic physical toll. In 1955, a stunt man fell onto Jay during a rehearsal. Moments later, on his trailer, his co-star found him clutching his chest. A heart attack. He missed 8 weeks of filming, and the writers, in a final act of tone-deaf irony, explained Tonto's absence by saying he was in Washington meeting the Great White Father. With the series wrapped, Jay turned his focus to a more lasting and meaningful legacy. He realized that boycotts wouldn't work, so he focused on infiltration. In the early 1960s, he became the co-founder of the Indian Actors Workshop in Los Angeles. Alongside activists like Buffy St. Marie and actors like Iron Eyes Cody, he started holding weekly classes, teaching not just acting and voice, but also stunt work and nutrition. His goal, he said, was to unlock the dormant creativity of the Indians and help Native American actors get into the Screen Actors Guild, ensuring the next generation wouldn't have to endure his humiliation. It wasn't just about acting, it was about identity, pride, and survival. He even ran a letter-writing campaign to President Eisenhower and top TV executives, urging better portrayals. A final, unjust act. Just as more serious and dignified roles were finally starting to open up for Native American actors, fate delivered a cruel blow. In 1975, Jay suffered a series of strokes that left him partially paralyzed. A second major stroke in 1976 severely affected his ability to speak. On July 17, 1979, just months before his passing, Hollywood finally recognized his contribution with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Silverheels attended in a wheelchair, barely able to mumble a few words of thanks. It was a heart-wrenching, bittersweet climax for a man who had been silenced, on screen and off, for so long. Jay Silverheels died on March 5, 1980, at the age of 67. His ashes were returned to the Six Nations Reserve in Ontario, while his son, Jay Silverheels Jr., bravely picked up the mantle and continued acting. His father's true legacy lives in the movement he started. He was inducted into the Western Performers Hall of Fame and the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. But perhaps his most powerful statement was delivered years earlier on The Tonight Show. He came out as Tonto, looked straight at the camera, and with a final brilliant act of defiance said, "My name is Tonto. I hail from Toronto, and I speak Esperanto." Even when the lines weren't his, Jay Silverheels always found a way to reclaim the stage. If you want more deep dives into the lives of Hollywood legends who fought against the roles that defined them, make sure you're subscribed to Eye on Fame. Click that button so you don't miss the next untold story.